Welcome students to this video lecture. The topic for today is the applications of radioactivity. So we have already discussed about what is radioactivity. It's a spontaneous process of disintegration of nuclei of certain elements in which they emit energetic particles and radiations. So are there any uses for this phenomenon of radioactivity? So two things to note here. One is natural radioactivity, the elements which are unstable by themselves, the nuclei of elements which are unstable by themselves, and they undergo this phenomenon of radioactivity. On the other hand, another process is there in which the nuclei of stable elements also can be made artificially radioactive by bombarding them with energetic particles and radiations. So these artificially induced radioactivity, also known as artificial radioactivity. So these isotopes of these elements, stable elements, are called the radioisotopes. So when we talk about the applications of radioactivity, we have to bear in mind both of this, and we'll talk about the applications of both naturally occurring radioactive isotopes, radioactive elements, and artificially induced radioactivity. So I have prepared a presentation for that. Let's go ahead. So what are the applications of radioactivity? There are varied applications of radioactivity, as we'll see as we go ahead through this presentation. It is because in the phenomenon of radioactivity, energetic radiations, also particles and radiations, are emitted from the radioactive sources, and these particles and radiations can be put to different uses. So radioisotopes, as I told you, radioactivity can be natural and artificial. So here we are talking about radioisotopes. So radioactivity has been induced artificially, and most of the uses of radioactivity, interesting techniques, as we'll go ahead, we'll understand, are using artificially induced, artificially produced radioisotopes. So the uses of radioactivity will be studied under the broadly classified under three headings. Of course, other uses also are there, but these are the ones that are there in your syllabus, and these are the ones which are the prominent ones we'll be studying. So the first heading can be radiography, then we have radioactive traces, then we have radioactive dating. We'll be focusing on these three uses of radioactivity. When we talk about the uses of radioactivity, we usually mean the uses of the radioactive elements and the radioactive isotopes. And radioactivity is the phenomenon exhibited by these elements and isotopes. So what is radiography? This is an imaging technique which is used to study and view the internal structure of an object. So this utilizes the phenomenon of emission of energetic radiations like gamma rays, X-rays, or other ionizing and non-ionizing radiations, which are used in this phenomenon, in this process or in this technique of radiography. So why? Because when we try to see an object in our daily life, we use visible light. But visible light usually doesn't penetrate from through the surface of the object. We can see the object externally. Now, radiography is a technique in which we use radiations which can enter inside the object, and we can see the object internal structure of the object. So this is basically the idea of radiography. It's an imaging technique. And here we are talking about ionizing and non-ionizing radiations. Other ionizing means radiations which can cause ionization, non-ionizing which cannot cause ionizations. So let's keep it simple till here. Or basically these are radiations which can enter through the surface of an object. So X-rays are used primarily for medical imaging in plain radiographs, or normally what we call the X-rays. When you go to the doctor, usually they advise, say if you have some fracture or something, they advise X-rays, to do an X-ray. But X-ray is not the procedure actually. X-ray is the electromagnetic radiation that is being used for the process. So that is radiography itself using X-rays. And CT scans, the difference with the plain radiographs or the normal X-rays is that the X-ray, it gives us a two-dimensional picture of the object, internal structure of an object, and CT scans, these are more complicated. It gives a three-dimensional picture of the internal structure of organs. Basically, we talk about that in medicine. However, gamma rays are energetic and more penetrating than X-rays. So, can we use the gamma rays for radiography? Yes, it is being used. It is used particularly in industries. Also in medicine it is used for some other techniques which we'll talk about a bit later. Externally used gamma radiations which are incident from outside, this is gamma radiography. It's used basically in industries to detect, say, internal defects and inhomogeneities in material. So in this technique, what is done basically is an object is exposed to the energetic radiations, and on the other side, photographic plates or detectors are kept which can detect the amount of radiation that is passing through. So in X-rays, what happens? The bones and the muscles, they absorb the radiations to different degrees. So in the counter or detector or the photographic plate, it leaves its impression. The amount of exposure of the photographic plate or the amount of radiations reaching the detector through different tissues will be different, so the imprint is left. In industrial radiography also, let me say I have a big piece of machinery or we have material which needs to be very homogeneous, very uniform. So I doubt there is some inhomogeneity there. So what I will do, I will expose these object, I will let gamma rays which are highly penetrating to pass through the object and detect the rays on the other side of the object. So I have a picture to show how it is done. So for these purposes, radioactive sources like iridium 192, cobalt 60, cesium 137, etc. are used. These are sources of gamma radiation. So this is basically the technique. This is the radiation source. So this is the specimen which we are observing. So let us say there is a void here. There is a gap. I have produced this material, but in this region there is an inhomogeneity. It was not produced properly. So this is a block of metal. There is a gap inside. So what will happen? The radiation as it passes through this region, more radiation will pass through compared to the regions outside the gap. So in the film, in the photographic plate, this region will be darker. So we can make out that there is some problem in this region. Also, suppose the thickness is not uniform in this region. It is lesser. So this region will be darker. So this is a simple pictographical, methodology which depicts the method how this radiography is done. Now the second use of radiography we are talking about is radioactive tracers, or we also call it the tracing technique. What it is? In this process of radioactive tracing or radioactive tracers, these are tiny amount of radioisotope which is mixed with the stable isotope. It's also called the radio tracer or radio label. Then after mixing it with the stable isotope, it is introduced into the body or the substance which needs to be examined. And the movement of this radioisotope, it can be monitored or traced by tracing the radiations emitted by it. So that's why it's called the radio tracer, or it's called the radioactive tracing technique. So these radioactive tracers are used in different fields. The first field that we are talking about is in medicine. In medicine, this is used for PET scans. This is positron emission tomography. So what is done is positron emission tomography is a process in which a radio tracer is introduced into the body of a person, and its motion is traced from outside. And SPECT is single photon emission computed tomography, SPECT. So these are two scans, SPECT scan or PET scan. These are used to detect anomalies in functioning of different organs, and also it can detect tumors. I'm not going into the details of why it is, how it is done, what happens, but basically we need to understand that these are procedures in which radioisotopes are used. And also these radio tracers are used to diagnose blocked coronary arteries, to detect disorders in bone, gallbladder disease, and intestinal bleeding. So radio tracers can be used in medicine to do these, to diagnose blocked coronary arteries. Simple example I can give you: suppose a radio tracer is injected into the blood of a person. There is a blockage in an artery somewhere. So what will happen? The blood flow will be restricted in that region where a blockage is there. So when it is traced from outside, in that region, the amount of radiation coming out from the radio level or the radio tracer is more, and hence the blockage can be detected. So this procedure, it requires injection of a small quantity of biologically important material like glucose or oxygen, which are labeled with radionuclides, such as carbon 11, nitrogen 13, oxygen 15. These are radioisotopes. Oxygen 16 is a normal isotope. Oxygen 15 is a radioisotope. Similarly, nitrogen 14 is stable isotope of nitrogen. This is nitrogen 13. So this small amount of radionuclide or the radio label is mixed with biologically important material like glucose or oxygen. So this glucose or oxygen will contain a small amount of these radionuclides. So this glucose can be introduced into the bloodstream intravenously through injections, and it can be traced. So what is observed is that when there is some, I'm not going into the biology of it, but just to let you know, if I have a diseased organ, the amount of absorption of glucose in those organs are usually more. So what happens? The amount of radiation coming out from those diseased organs will be more. And also it can help detect tumors. So also it's used in radiotherapy. Radiotherapy is a process in which, or it's a technique in which, pinpointed energetic gamma radiations from radioactive sources like cobalt 60 is used to kill cancerous cells. It is used to treat cancers. It's used to treat tumors. So this is radiotherapy. So this is a simple example of scanning. What is being done is, calling it a gamma camera rather. So what will happen? A radioisotope is introduced into the body of the person. Then the radiations that are being emitted, this is the collimator, it collimates the radiation that is emitted. So these radiations are multiplied. These are detectors, photomultiplier tubes are detectors, and image crystal, NAI, these are part of the detector. So this detector, it sends the signal to the computer and the image is produced. So this is a simple example of you can talk about scanning. So the nuclear energy inside the radioactive nucleus it emits gamma. The energy is transformed into gamma electromagnetic energy. Then, with the help of these crystals, these gamma rays, when they are incident on this sodium iodide crystal, energetic photons, light photons are released. They are multiplied, flashes of light, they are produced. These signals are passed on to the detector computer and the image is produced. So we are not going into the details of the technique, but basically our basic idea is that the radiations emitted from the radionuclide or the radioisotope or the radio label introduced into the body of the person can be detected and an image formed. So this is a simple, schematic diagram of how a scanning, this can be a PET scan, is done. So next, we talked about in medicine, in agriculture. What are the uses in agriculture? Fertilizers labeled with radioactive isotopes such as phosphorus 32 and nitrogen 15 have been used to study the uptake, retention and utilization of fertilizers. So we know plants use phosphorus and nitrogen, so stable isotopes. So if we mix a small amount of radio phosphorus and radio nitrogen with the fertilizer, then we can study how the plants they absorb and how much they absorb, in which part of the plant it is retained, the fertilizers are retained. So basically we can study how the plants they use the fertilizers and how much they use. So why it is important? It helps in the judicious use of fertilizers. This is necessary in agriculture so that we can limit the use of fertilizers. We give plants that much of fertilizers that is necessary for the plants. This in turn can help reduce environmental pollution. Also, radio-labeled pesticides were used to monitor the persistence of the residues in food items, soil, ground, water and environment. From the plants, we get our food. So these radio-labeled pesticides, when we use pesticides for the purpose of agriculture, these pesticides, they find their way to our food items. So using radio-labeled pesticides means using a mixture where with the pesticides, a little amount of radioisotope is mixed. We can study how much of these pesticides are retained in the food items or in the soil, groundwater and environment. So this can help us to trace and minimize the side effects of pesticides and insecticides that are used in agriculture. So this is under use of radioisotopes or hence radioactivity. So this is a simple example where we are showing the absorption of radiophosphorus. So the fertilizer is introduced into the plant and the plant absorbs it. Then with the help of a detector, we can detect the amount of radiation being emitted from the different parts of the plant. So where phosphorus is stored, we can study. There are other uses in agriculture. In biological control methods for pests and insects, radio labels or radioisotopes can be used, which in turn will help protect the environment by minimizing the use of insecticides. Instead of using pesticides and insecticides to protect our plants from pests and insects, we can use biological control methods. So what is this? Sterile insect technique is one, which consists of giving sterilizing doses of ionizing radiation to laboratory reared male insects. Let me say I have an insect, breed of insects which eat up my crops. So what can be done? In the laboratory, a large number of such insects can be reared. Usually male insects are reared, which are made sterile by giving them doses of ionizing radiations. So these male insects are sterile, they can't reproduce. So these sterile insects, male insects, are then released in large numbers to the infested areas. So what happens then? These sterile male insects, they mate with the females which are there in the infested areas, and once they mate with the females, the sterile male insects, the females cannot produce any more offsprings. So as a result of which, the population of the insect pest in the area is drastically reduced, and over years it can be eliminated totally. So sterile insect technique is a very interesting biological control method used in agriculture. Also, gamma irradiation kills bacteria, insects and parasites and retards spoilage of some foods. So this is another technique. The food items or the crops there exposed to energetic gamma radiations, of course in calculated doses, as a result of which any bacteria, parasites that are there which are responsible for spoiling these crops gets killed. Also, it can stop the decay of some items and sprouting of, let me say, potatoes and onions. These can be stopped or delayed. So in industry, how are radioactive tracers used in industry? So radioisotopes are used by manufacturers as tracers to monitor fluid flow and filtration, detect leaks and gauge engine wear and corrosion of process equipment. Quite a few. So basically they are used by manufacturers. Say we have a pipeline through which some kind of oil or liquid is flowing. So if we doubt in some inaccessible area, let me say, there is a leak in the piping. So what can be done? A radioisotope can be introduced into the liquid. So as it passes through the liquid, if there is a leak, and it is monitored from outside. So if there is a leak, the liquid will come out of the leak, carrying with it the radioisotope. So in that region, the amount of radiation detected will be more. So also it can be used to detect internal cracks in machineries and monitor the thickness of sheets being produced. So I'll show you how it is done. Radio tracers are also used in oil and gas industries to help determine the extent of oil fields. So let me say, underground, we know that there is an oil field. So it's not possible to dig up the whole area and see the extent of the oil field. So what can be done? Some radioisotope can be introduced into the oil field until it will spread throughout the area, and by monitoring the movement of the radioisotope or the radiations being emitted by the radioisotope, an idea can be made out about the extent of the oil fields. And even in underground pipelines, oil pipelines, as we talked about, it can detect leaks, etc. So this is one way in which the leaks, underground pipeline, the leaks can be detected. Radioisotope is introduced into the pipe. It emits radiation wherever there is a leak, and Geiger-Müller counter throughout it detects over the pipe. Here, in regions where there is no leak, the amount of radiation will be less, but in the region where there is a leak, the detector will detect more amount of radiation. So hence we can make out a leak is there. Also, this is a process in which the thickness of paper, this is one example, even thin sheets of metal, same procedure can be used. So radioactive source is there. The paper as it is being produced, it's exposed to radiations from a source, and GM counter, this is a GM tube, we'll talk about it in the later classes. This is a detector of radiation. It detects the amount of radiation passing through. So if the paper thickness is uniform, the amount of radiation detected is flat. It will keep on going constant. But if somewhere the thickness is more, then the amount of radiation will be less. If the thickness is thinner than other regions, then there the amount of radiation will be more. So this is automatic mechanism. What will happen? Once the detector detects that the thickness is increasing or decreasing, automatically the pressure on the rollers, they can be changed to regulate the thickness of the material being produced. The last use of radioactivity or radioisotopes that we'll be talking about today is radioactive dating. This is a method of estimating the age of carbon-based materials that originated from living organisms. Radiocarbon dating basically is a method of estimating the age of carbon-based materials or fossils, let us say. It's used to determine ages of archaeological samples, very old samples. Of course, limitation is there. It can measure or estimate ages to up to 60,000 to 70,000 years. So what is happening here is that it's based on estimating the amount of carbon-14 present in the sample. So carbon-14 is a isotope of carbon which is unstable and weakly radioactive. It has a half-life of around 5,730 years. So what happens is carbon-14 is continually being produced in the upper atmosphere by the effect of cosmic ray neutrons on nitrogen-14 atoms. In the atmosphere, we have nitrogen gas. So nitrogen nucleus is always there in the atmosphere. And cosmic rays, these are energetic radiations which are coming and bombarding the Earth's atmosphere from outer space. These are called the cosmic rays. So in the cosmic rays, neutrons are there, energetic neutrons are there. So these neutrons, once they bombard the nitrogen-14 atoms, carbon-14 is produced. So this carbon-14, it's immediately oxidized in air to form carbon dioxide. Of course, 14, it's not carbon dioxide with normal carbon, stable carbon. It's always there, stable carbon is always there. It's 14C carbon dioxide, 14C coming together with oxygen to form carbon dioxide. So what happens in the atmosphere, carbon is always there in the form of carbon dioxide, and the ratio of carbon-14 to carbon-12 in the atmosphere is fixed. It's a constant because carbon-14 is continuously being produced in the atmosphere because of the neutron bombardment of nitrogen-14 atoms. So what happens is, the plants, they absorb the radiocarbon present with atmospheric carbon dioxide and pass it on to animals through the food chain. So the radiocarbon finds its way, or carbon-14 finds its way into the biological food cycle. It's because of the plants using the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere to produce their food via photosynthesis. Then animals, they get the food from the plants. So the carbon-14 finds its way into living organisms. So as long as an organism is living, plant or animal, there is a continuous exchange of carbon dioxide with the atmosphere. So the ratio of carbon-14 to carbon-12 in living organisms is same as that in the atmosphere. This is clear, I suppose. The ratio, as because the ratio of carbon-14 to carbon-12 in the atmosphere is constant, and the living organisms, they continuously exchange carbon dioxide with the atmosphere, the ratio of carbon-14 to carbon-12 in the atmosphere is same as that in the living organisms, in the body of the living organisms. But when this exchange is stopped, that means when the organism dies, the ratio of carbon-14 to carbon-12 inside the dead organism begins to decrease. Why? Because the exchange stops. So the amount of carbon-14 that is there at the point of death, it starts decaying. So the amount of carbon 14 decreases where the amount of carbon 12 remains the same. So the ratio of carbon 14 to carbon 12 starts decreasing. So at any point of time since the date, by measuring the ratio of the two carbon isotopes in the fossil or in the dead plant or animal species and comparing that ratio with the atmospheric ratio, the time since the death of the organism can be found out. So we have an archaeological sample, let me say a piece of wood. So what can be done is we have to find out the activity of from the activity of the carbon 14, the rate at which carbon 14 is decaying in that wood sample or the fossil sample, we can determine the ratio of carbon 14 to carbon 12. So after determining the ratio of carbon 14 to 12 in the fossil, we'll compare it with the atmosphere ratio that is there in the atmosphere, and hence the time since the death of that tree can be found out. So this is a graphical representation of the process of carbon dating. What happens? Cosmic radiations, neutrons, they enter the Earth's atmosphere and collide with atoms, creating an energetic neutron. This neutron bombards the nitrogen 14, so it converts itself into carbon 14 along with the emission of a proton. This carbon 14 goes into plants through photosynthesis. From the plants, animals take it up, carbon 14, but however, following the death and burial, wood and bones lose carbon 14 as it changes to nitrogen 14 by beta decay. So carbon 14 radioisotope, as I told you, it has a half-life of 5730 years. Left to itself, it's unstable. Carbon 14, it decays to again back to normal nitrogen 14 by emission of a beta particle, beta decay. So carbon 14 beta decay, it forms nitrogen 14. So this is the basic idea of carbon dating. So at any point of time, these fossils of the pieces of wood or remnants of the dead organism, we can find out the ratio of carbon 14 to carbon 12. So carbon dating can be used to estimate ages of samples till around 60,000 years. What about samples which are more than that? Also, for carbon dating, radiocarbon dating, we need samples having organic components. Carbon. For older samples, other dating methods as uranium dating are used, which have longer half-lives. So basically, say to estimate the ages of geological ages or to find out the ages of rocks, etc., uranium dating and other radioactive dating methods are used. So that is all about the uses of radioactivity that we'll discuss for today. As I told you, some other uses are there which has not been listed here, but these are the main uses of radioactivity that we'll be discussing for this semester. Thank you for your patient listening.